Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from the Frontier. Thank you for stopping by. I'm always grateful. I did an interview with Albert Mugo, who's the Managing Director and CEO of Kengen. Have a look at that. That's on the front page of Rich Wrap-Ups. Macro thoughts, as I said a few sessions ago, it's risk on. What you're seeing in the movement right now is an unwind of the bullish dollar story. The Fed has no reason to raise rates when you're getting the data that we've been getting lately. And essentially, that's what's taking up risk markets at this point in time. The perception that there will be no rate hike this year. Home thoughts. The SETI Institute, Mars's mysterious South Pole revealed in new photograph, was tweeted. That took me to Don DeLillo's Cosmopolis. There are dead stars that still shine because their light is trapped in time. Where do I stand in this light, which does not strictly exist? In the beginning, there were only probabilities. The universe could only come into existence if someone observed it. It does not matter that the observers turned up several billion years later. The universe exists because we are aware of it. That's Martin J. Rees. And him again. We're not aware of the big picture any more than a plankton whose universe was a liter of water would be aware of the world's topography and biosphere. He's written this great book called Just Six Numbers, the Deep Forces That Shape the Universe. It's practically celestial in its incredible mathematics. One can marvel almost indefinitely at the balance between the nuclear forces and the astoundingly feeble but ultimately inexorable power of gravity, giving us n, a huge number involving 36 zeros, and nod gratefully each time one is told that were gravity not almost exactly 1036 times weaker, then we wouldn't be here. One can gasp at the implications of the density parameter, omega, which 1 second after the Big Bang could not have varied from unity by more than 1 part in a million billion, or the universe would not still be expanding 13.7 billion years on. Einstein's supposed biggest blunder, the cosmological constant A for lambda, is a number not only smaller than first expected, it is a number so small that the puzzle is that it is not zero. But this weakest and most mysterious of forces, think of a value with 120 zeros after the decimal point, seems to dictate the whole future of the universe. It seems just strong enough to push the most distant galaxies away from us at an unexpected rate. Were it much stronger, there might be no galaxies to accelerate anywhere. Hannah and I are going to Borana tomorrow. We will certainly look out for the Milky Way. Let me put up a photograph of a bush dinner at Borana and another one of ranch elephants with Mount Kenya in the horizon. This is the Laikipia plateau. It's very beautiful up there. Political reflections. Let's start with Carter, who told a joint news conference, "Make no mistake, the United States will fly, sail and operate wherever international law allows, as we do around the world, and the South China Sea will not be an exception," he says. "We will do that at the time and places of our choosing." He had been asked about reports that the US had already decided to conduct freedom of navigation operations inside a 12 nautical mile limits that China claims around islands built on reefs in the Spratly archipelago. I concluded by saying the pivot to Asia is bearing its fangs again. That was a reference to a piece I wrote on the 2nd of December 2013 with that very title. Let me put up a photograph of the Spratly Islands. The same US defense chief is saying we will deter Russia's malign and destabilizing influence vowed to take all necessary steps against a resurgent Russia, which is challenging a frustrated Washington in Eastern Europe and the Middle East. Ash Carter said the Russian President Putin had wrapped his country in a shroud of desolation, of isolation, which only a drastic change in policy could reverse. Putin, of course, had already responded, saying, "I believe some of our partners simply have mush for brains." In essence, I think Putin is now the price setter, as it were, in Syria. And I wrote about this on the 5th of October when I spoke of Putin being a geopolitical grandmaster. And I said in that same article that President Obama is now probably considering how he can wrestle the oil price to $20. And I think that is not a flippant remark. Russia says warplane eyeing US jet in Syria not meant to scare. Russia said its warplane flying bombing raids in Syria came close to US jet in the area, highlighting the risks of its military campaign as the former Cold War foes remain at odds over how to coordinate their operations in the Middle Eastern country. A Russian Su-30 fighter flew within just 2 kilometers to 3 kilometers of a US warplane on October 10 during a mission in Aleppo province. The intention was to identify the plane and not scare anyone, with Russian and US officials planning to discuss the incident, it said in a statement. The US, however, declined Putin's offer to dispatch a delegation led by Prime Minister Dmitry Medvedev to Washington to explain Russia's operations in Syria, and has no plans to send a team to Russia. Lavrov said. A Kremlin spokesman, Dmitry Peskov, on Wednesday expressed regret over the American rejection. Let me put up a photograph of new Sukhoi Su-30 fighter jets that I found via Syria intelligence. Bloomberg is saying how cyberspace is now becoming a second front in Russia's clash with NATO. It's saying the Warsaw Stock Exchange is but one example of the heightened cyber activity. Hackers who rifled the exchange last October in a breach that set off alarms among Western intelligence agencies proclaimed there were Muslim militants angry over Poland's support for a bombing campaign against the Islamic State. Paul Craig Roberts, about this MH17 report, said only an idiot would believe it. I think he's right. And that took me back from MH17 to MH370 when I wrote a piece in August last year. And I said the signal announcing this new arrhythmic normal was the disappearance of the MH370. Since then, planes have been falling out of the sky like flies. And the uncertainty around MH370 and MH17 is sharpened by the way the stories seemingly turned on and off. And that took me back to Don DeLillo. We are not witnessing the flow of information as much as pure spectacle, or information made sacred, ritually unreadable. The small monitors of the office, home and car become a kind of idolatry here, where crowds might gather in astonishment. Currency markets, the euro now trading 114.41, dollar index below 93.80, Japanese yen 118.35, Swissy 0.9489, pound 154.86, the Aussie, about which I turned bullish, 0.7359, India rupee 64.805, South Korean won 11.2824, Real 380.84, Egyptian pound 783.40, and the rand not far off my objective of 13.1462 last. Dollar index, let me put up a 3-month chart. I still think we're headed lower. Euro dollar probed, got through my 114.50 target, so I'm on the sidelines, but let's have a look at it. And you remember I've been bullish about the New Zealand dollar. Have a look at this 1-month chart. It's at the New Zealand dollar's at the highest since June 30, surged 2.2% on Wednesday, its best one-day performance since March. Walmart posted its biggest one-day percentage loss since 1988. Have a look at the chart. Eric Hunsader, amazing that Walmart nearly kissed the circuit break on the way down. Have a look at his chart as well. I got a gold chart from Holger's Twitter feed, and my target is now 12.25. And just to give you the price for it, 11.84. Crude oil, let me put up a 3-month chart, failed to hold above 50. Take you back to what I was saying about President Obama, massive stock bill. So let's forget that bullish call and let's get short again on a balance. Is Xi's economy more distorted than Mao's? Goldman's Haas says yes. Have a look at what I wrote in September. China must fix economy despite military show. Holger again, ringgit leads Asia currency rally as an example of the rally we've seen in riskier assets. On this day in 1999, Africa lost one of her greatest sons, that being President Julius Nyerere of Tanzania. And so there is an election due there as well, and the Tanzanian president saw fit to warn against violence ahead of polls. Jakaya Kikwete dismissed opposition accusations on Wednesday that his CCM party planned to rig a presidential vote next week, and warned against violence ahead of the October 25 elections. Addressing a rally in Dodoma, Kikwete accused the opposition of stoking unrest before the parallel presidential, parliamentary and local government polls. Anyone who participates in violence during the elections will be dealt with, said Kikwete. Our security forces will ensure that the elections are peaceful. We will never allow our democracy to be kidnapped. The opposition's fueling of widespread fears of vote rigging has increased the probability of violence, but this is likely to be limited to pockets of the country, particularly urban areas, said Ahmed Salem of Intelligence. Obama to send 300 troops to Cameroon to help Boko Haram fight, ordered the deployment of about 300 soldiers to Cameroon to help in the fight against Islamist militants in the region. Operation will be part of a broader regional effort to stop the spread of Boko Haram. The US has AFRICOM. They have a very strong position. They're embedded on the continent, and it's a very powerful US lever with which to tilt the African pitch. Tom Burgess, Sam Parr, the middleman at the heart of China's surge into Africa, has been detained in Beijing. And I read Tom's book a couple of weeks ago, The Looting Machine, and therefore this is a pretty big deal. This is the Queensway tycoon Sam Parr. He's detained in a communist probe. Future of a secretive Hong Kong-based business network at the heart of China's advance into Africa has been thrown into doubt after reports that its frontman, jet-setting tycoon with 7 names and ties to the intelligence services, has been caught up in a Communist Party investigation. Detained at a hotel in Beijing on October the 8th. Very interesting fellow at the center of a spider's web of investments across the continent, particularly big in Angola and Zimbabwe. It's hard to imagine that the Queensway Group as we know it could survive without him. I'll put up a photograph of Sam Parr, China's mysterious middleman in Africa. South African all-share up 6.61% year to date. That's all about Sam Miller, I suspect. Dollar Rand, have a look at this 6-month chart. I think we get to 13. Egyptian EGX 30 up marginally 0.24% to close, and therefore the index is down 14.09% year to date. Nigerian all share fell 1.3% yesterday. It's down 14.4% year to date. Ghana Stock Exchange Composite Index down 11.84% year to date. Let's move on to Kenya, the central bank. They've got somebody curating their Twitter handle. It's quite good. It's timely. It's on point. So there were a number of tweets yesterday. They're saying Imperial Bank represents 1.8% of the banking sector. Challenges do not present systemic risk for the banking sector, saying that the banking sector remains safe and robust. Action on Imperial Bank are intended to protect the public good and depositors. They also said they welcome self-disclosure by the board of directors of Imperial Bank, which facilitated prompt action by the CBK. information in social media alleging that some banks have failed to meet certain thresholds are false. Stands ready to provide adequate liquidity support to the banking system to ensure stability and robustness. CBK and KBA are working together to provide relevant information to avert any speculation that may undermine market confidence. Well, it's been undermined. Go by the stock market. World Bank cuts Kenya's growth forecast on forex market turmoil. The economy is expected to expand 5.4% this year, compared with an estimate of 6% in December. Also cut its projection for 2016 by a similar margin to 5.7%. The revisions reflect the reassessment of risks associated with macroeconomic instability, resulting from exchange rate volatility, inflationary threats associated with concerns about currency depreciation and delayed fiscal consolidation, balance of payment pressures, and the poor transmission of the effects of low oil prices, it said. And their report is called Storm Clouds Gathering, which is more of a giveaway. Current expansionary fiscal path is not sustainable and presents a risk to growth, although heavy infrastructural spending is a boon for Kenya's production space and future growth. The short to medium term macro fiscal framework is vulnerable to macroeconomic shock as fiscal space has been wiped out. Overall fiscal deficit of 8.3% of GDP in 2014-2015 and a budgeted 8.7% 2015-2016 is high by any standard. So the World Bank at 5.4%. I told the FT a while back, all my forward indicators suggest the next 2 quarters will be sub 5%. And therefore, I don't see how the government's going to get to this level. The one positive is, I was complaining about this as the World Bank was in their report, saying that the government should do more to pass on the benefits of low oil prices to consumers. And at least we got that with super petrol slashed by nearly 10%, very belatedly. Kenyan coffee chain Java House targets Africa expansion. Kenya's Java House has 36 coffee houses and restaurants and plans to open outlets across Africa in the next 5 years to capitalize on rising consumer spending, its CEO said. Kevin Ashley, who founded Java's first outlet in 1999, said the company would open in Kigali, Dar es Salaam, Lagos, Accra and Lusaka. For now, the firm's only outlets beyond Kenya are in Kampala. We see in 5 years that we're going to be having a major presence in most of the major urban centers of Africa, he told Reuters. Ashley sold 90% of the company to ECB for an undisclosed sum in 2012. Said there was growing demand for the chain's products, from a cup of coffee worth $1.50 to $10 steaks. We can't keep up with the growth of our customer base in Africa, so we have enough to keep us busy. Annual revenue was more than $29 million in 2014. New store usually costs about 50 million shillings to set up, $500,000. And then I like this: we don't want to become the hyena that smells meat in 2 different corners and then tears himself into 2 pieces and dies right on the spot because he can't decide which way to go. Kenya shilling 103.19. Nairobi all shares slumped 2.53% yesterday to close at a fresh 2015 low. It's down 16.31% year to date. NSE 20 slumped 2.59% yesterday, down 24.19% year to date. If you haven't seen Pradeep's Mindspeak presentation, that's on Rich Wrap-Ups, the Q&A as well, and then a couple of short clips, him talking about the share price and about the total assets and that gap between the share price and the value of the assets. Uchumi officially announced the discontinuance of financial support for its operations in Uganda and Tanzania, sent home 900 staff in Uganda and Tanzania after closing 11 loss-making outlets. This was expected. Our outlets in Uganda and Tanzania made up only 4.75% of our operations, yet they account for over 25% of our operating costs, so a sensible decision. Stock market had an awful day yesterday. Banking stocks were particularly hammered. Perception-wise, this is a comment from Minjiri from Genghis Capital. It doesn't paint a nice picture coming as it does so soon after the collapse of Dubai Bank. It doesn't look good to investors who will be watching the sector, especially foreign investors. This is Imperial Bank, obviously. Banking sector stocks, as I said, have been getting hammered. And the point is, second and third tier banks might well have already witnessed or are seeing deposit flight as depositors fly to quality. Big session, very heavy trading, 1.497 billion shillings. Safaricom, of course, consumer gets the tide down 2%. TPS Sereno high-ticked 5.36%. But, Jan Mohammed was very realistic in saying that rebound was not coming anytime soon. He saw it coming in the second half of next year. WPP Scan Group has fallen 17.85% this month, fresh 2015 closing low. Obviously, the Imperial Bank spillover was experienced acutely in the banking sector. Equity Group tumbled 8% to close at 40. KCB down 4.733%. Barclays down 3.25%. Co-op down 3.903%. NIC Bank down 6.533%. INM bucked the trend. It was high-ticked 4.17%. Jubilee down 16.667% this month alone. Kengen, which surged 19.888% the day after the earnings were announced, gave back some of that, but I think it's going to rally up to 10 and then 12. So the market's under tremendous pressure, big flight into the bond market. When you're paying above 20% for 1 year money, it's going to suck in cash, which it's doing. Stock market very fragile. We can't call a bottom here yet. Once again, thank you for stopping by. Next time I'll be back on Monday, so I'm going to take off tomorrow morning, sample the Laikipia plateau. Once again,